I stood at gate 23 in LaGuardia Airport, holding my 5-year-old granddaughter Emma's trembling hand as my phone buzzed. The message from my daughter-in-law Madison made my blood freeze. We decided she stays. Through the window, I watched Derek board first class with Madison and her 2 children, Tyler and Sophia. Emma pressed her face against the glass, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Where's Daddy going, Grandma Betsy?" she whispered. The plane doors closed with mechanical finality. I didn't cry. Something fierce awakened inside me instead. The drive home from the airport felt like traveling through a nightmare. Emma sat buckled in her booster seat, clutching a small backpack that contained everything she owned in the world now. As we pulled into my driveway in Westchester County, her innocent chatter began revealing the horrifying truth. Inside my kitchen, I made Emma a sandwich while she continued talking, each revelation more disturbing than the last. Madison had been systematically preparing Emma for this abandonment for weeks, maybe months. She had convinced my son to take this family vacation to Disney World, but clearly, Emma was never meant to return home with them. Mommy Madison said I wasn't really part of their family anyway, Emma said, taking small bites of her peanut butter and jelly sandwich. She said Tyler and Sophia were her real children, and I was just extra. I knelt beside Emma's chair, fighting back tears. "Listen to me very carefully, sweetheart. You are absolutely part of this family. You always have been, and you always will be." What Mommy Madison said wasn't true. But even as I spoke these words, my mind raced with memories that suddenly made terrible sense. Derek had grown distant over the past year since marrying Madison. Our weekly family dinners had stopped. He had stopped calling me back promptly. When I visited their house, Madison always seemed to orchestrate situations where Emma appeared difficult or demanding. I remembered the last time I had seen Derek, just 2 weeks ago. He had looked exhausted, almost hollow. When I asked about Emma, he had given vague responses about her going through a phase and needing more structure. Now I realized Madison had been poisoning his mind against his own daughter. That evening, after putting Emma to bed in my guest room, I sat at my kitchen table and tried calling Derek. The phone went straight to voicemail. I tried texting him, but the messages showed as undelivered. Somehow, Madison had convinced him to cut off contact with me entirely. I opened Emma's small backpack to sort her clothes for washing. Inside, I found 3 outfits, a toothbrush, and a single photograph of Emma with her mother Sarah. Nothing else. No favorite books, no special toys, no personal mementos from her 6 years of life. Madison had erased Emma's entire childhood, reducing her existence to the contents of a small bag. The photograph of Sarah stabbed at my heart. My daughter-in-law had been such a loving mother, such a gentle soul. She had made Derek promise at the hospital, as she lay dying from injuries sustained in that terrible car accident, that he would always put Emma first. He had sworn to her that Emma would never feel alone or unwanted. Now here I sat, holding his broken promise in my hands, while his daughter slept upstairs, abandoned by the father who had once loved her more than life itself. The next morning, while Emma watched cartoons, I locked myself in my home office and began making phone calls. Something wasn't right about this entire situation, and my instincts told me Madison had been planning this for much longer than anyone realized. My first call was to Derek's best friend Marcus, who had been his college roommate and best man at both his weddings. Marcus answered on the second ring, but his voice sounded strained when he heard my name. "Betsy, I'm surprised to hear from you," Marcus said carefully. "Derek told me you two were having some family issues. What kind of issues did he mention?" I asked, my heart sinking. "He said you were being critical of Madison and that it was causing stress in their marriage. He said you were trying to interfere with their parenting decisions regarding Emma." Marcus paused. "Look, I've known Derek for 15 years. This doesn't sound like the guy I know, but he seemed really convinced that you were causing problems." I explained what had happened at the airport, and Marcus' tone immediately changed. "That's insane, Betsy. Derek would never abandon Emma. He talks about her constantly. Or at least, he used to." Another pause. "Actually, now that I think about it, he stopped returning my calls about 3 months ago. Madison told my wife that Derek was dealing with MS psychological issues and needed space from friends to focus on family. After hanging up with Marcus, I began researching Madison's online presence. Her social media painted a picture of a struggling stepmother trying her best with a difficult child. Post after post described Emma's supposed behavioral problems, her inability to adjust to their blended family, and Madison's exhaustion from trying to help her, but the dates troubled me. Madison had been posting about Emma's problems since just 2 months after marrying Derek. Long before any real adjustment period could have occurred, she had been building a public narrative of Emma as a troubled child from the very beginning. I dug deeper and discovered something that made my blood run cold. Madison had been researching boarding schools and therapeutic programs for children with behavioral disorders. Her browser history, which I accessed through Derek's shared family computer account that I still had from helping them set it up, showed extensive research into residential treatment facilities. But that wasn't all. She had also researched legal procedures for step-parents seeking to terminate parental relationships and had visited websites about children aging out of state care systems. Madison hadn't just planned to abandon Emma, she had planned to make her disappear from their lives completely. Emma wandered into my office around noon, asking for lunch. As I made her a grilled cheese sandwich, she shared more details about life in Derek and Madison's house that painted an increasingly disturbing picture. "Daddy got really sleepy a lot," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Mommy Madison said it was because I made him tired with all my bad behavior. She said I gave him headaches and made him forget things. This struck me as odd. Derek had always been energetic and sharp. I had noticed during recent visits that he seemed foggy and confused, but I had attributed it to stress from his demanding job as a software engineer." "Did Daddy take medicine for his headaches?" I asked gently. "Mommy Madison put special powder in his coffee every morning," Emma said. "She said it was vitamins to help him feel better, but it made him act funny. Sometimes he couldn't remember things we talked about the day before." My hands froze as I flipped Emma's sandwich. Madison had been drugging my son. She had been systematically undermining his mental clarity to make him more susceptible to her manipulation. That afternoon, I called Derek's employer, Technosoft Solutions, where he had worked for 8 years. I spoke with his manager, Janet Wilson, who had always thought highly of Derek's work performance. "Actually, Betsy, I'm glad you called," Janet said. "Derek's performance has declined significantly over the past 6 months. He seems scattered, forgetful, and has missed several important deadlines. His wife called me about 2 months ago to explain that he was dealing with family stress related to his daughter's behavioral issues. She had spent over a year systematically destroying Derek's support systems, undermining his cognitive function with drugs, and building false narratives about Emma's behavior. The vacation to Disney World hadn't been a family bonding trip. It had been the final phase of her plan to eliminate Emma from their family permanently. As I tucked Emma into bed that night, she looked up at me with Sarah's gentle brown eyes and asked, "Grandma Betsy, did I do something really bad to make Daddy not want me anymore?" I held her close and whispered, "No, sweetheart. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make terrible mistakes, but that doesn't mean you're not loved. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. And deep down, your daddy loves you too." But privately, I wondered if Derek was too far gone to remember that love. Madison had almost destroyed him, and in doing so, she had nearly destroyed the most precious thing in my world. I couldn't let that happen. I wouldn't let that happen. The next morning, I called Patricia Walsh, a family attorney who had handled Sarah's estate after her death. Patricia had always been straightforward and compassionate, qualities I desperately needed as I navigated this legal nightmare. "Betsy, what you're describing sounds like parental alienation and possibly criminal abandonment," Patricia said after I explained the situation. "But we need to move quickly. The longer Emma remains in your care without legal documentation, the more complicated this becomes." We met at her office that afternoon. While Emma played quietly in the waiting room with toys Patricia's staff had provided, we reviewed my options. The news wasn't encouraging. "The problem is that Derek is Emma's legal father and has the right to make decisions about her care," Patricia explained. "Unless we can prove he's unfit or that Emma is in danger, The court will likely support his parental rights, even if his decision seems heartless. But then Patricia made some phone calls that revealed something devastating. Derek had already been to a lawyer. 3 days before their trip, he had signed papers that Madison's attorney had prepared. He believed he was authorizing temporary educational and medical decisions for Emma while they traveled. In reality, he had signed over temporary guardianship to Madison and had agreed to a psychological evaluation for Emma. "It gets worse," Patricia said, reviewing faxed documents. Madison's legal team has scheduled Emma for an evaluation with Dr. Harrison Pike, a psychologist who has a reputation for diagnosing children with severe behavioral disorders that require residential treatment. My heart sank. They're going to try to have her institutionalized. It appears so. And if Dr. Pike recommends residential treatment and Derek agrees as Emma's legal guardian, there's very little we can do to stop it. I thought about Emma's innocent questions, her gentle nature, her resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. The idea of her being locked away in some facility, convinced that she was mentally ill, filled me with rage. "What can we do?" I asked. "We file for emergency custody immediately," Patricia said. "And we pray that the court-appointed social worker sees through Madison's lies." The emergency custody hearing was scheduled for Friday afternoon, just 2 days away. Patricia warned me that Emma would need to be interviewed by Sandra Mills, a social worker from the Department of Children and Family Services. If Sandra believed Madison's claims about Emma's behavioral problems, she could recommend that Emma be placed in state care until the custody dispute was resolved. That evening, I tried to prepare Emma for the interview without traumatizing her further. I explained that a nice lady would come to talk with her about her feelings and her family. "Will she ask me about the bad things I did?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with worry. "Sweetheart, you haven't done any bad things," I assured her. "Just tell her the truth about how you feel and what happened. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded solemnly, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Madison had spent months convincing this child that she was fundamentally flawed, that her very existence caused problems for everyone around her. On Thursday morning, Sandra Mills arrived at my house. She was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a gentle manner that immediately put Emma at ease. They sat together in my living room while I waited anxiously in the kitchen. I could hear their conversation through the open doorway. Emma's voice was soft but clear as she answered Sandra's questions about her life, her feelings, and her experiences with Madison. "The lady said, 'I made Daddy sick because I was too much trouble,'" Emma explained. "She said good little girls don't ask for hugs or want bedtime stories every night. She said I was selfish because I missed my real mommy." Sandra's voice remained professional, but I detected a note of concern. "How did that make you feel when she said those things?" "Sad," Emma whispered. "And scared. I tried really hard to be good, but she said I was still too much trouble. She said Daddy would be happier without me." After the interview, Sandra spoke with me privately. Her expression was troubled. "Betsy, I've been doing this job for 12 years, and Emma shows no signs of behavioral disorders or emotional disturbance beyond normal grief responses," she said. "What she describes sounds like emotional abuse, not behavioral problems. However, I have to tell you that Dr. Pike's preliminary report, based on Madison's documentation, paints a very different picture." She showed me Dr. Pike's report, which described Emma as a child with severe attachment disorders, oppositional behavior, and potentially dangerous tendencies toward other children. The report recommended immediate residential treatment in a facility that specialized in children with severe behavioral problems. "This is all lies," I said, my voice shaking. "Emma has never hurt another child. She's gentle and sweet and loving." "I believe you," Sandra said. "But Dr. Pike's reputation carries weight with the family court. We'll need concrete evidence to counter his recommendations." That night, as I sat beside Emma's bed watching her sleep, I realized how close Madison had come to succeeding. If I hadn't been at that airport, if Emma had been left in the care of social services, Dr. Pike's false diagnosis could have sent her into a system where she might have been lost forever. But Madison had made one crucial mistake. She had underestimated the fierce love of a grandmother who had already lost too much and wasn't about to lose anymore. Friday morning arrived with the weight of everything hanging in the balance. While Emma ate breakfast, I made a series of phone calls that would either save my granddaughter or seal her fate. My first call was to Mrs. Rodriguez, Emma's kindergarten teacher at Maplewood Elementary School. Mrs. Rodriguez had taught for 22 years and had a reputation for being honest and thorough in her assessments of children. "Mrs. Patterson, I've been wondering about Emma," Mrs. Rodriguez said when I explained the situation. "She hasn't been in school for 3 weeks, and when I called the house, Madison told me Emma was receiving private tutoring for behavioral issues. That struck me as odd because Emma is one of my most well-behaved students." Mrs. Rodriguez agreed to provide written testimony about Emma's classroom behavior and social interactions. According to her records, Emma had never had a single disciplinary incident, played well with other children, and showed normal emotional responses to everyday classroom situations. My next call was to Dr. Sarah Williams, Emma's pediatrician since birth. Dr. Williams had monitored Emma's emotional health closely after Sarah's death and had never noted any concerning behaviors or recommended psychological intervention. "I'm appalled by what you're telling me, Doctor," Williams said after I explained Dr. Pike's report. "Emma's medical records show a perfectly normal child who has grieved appropriately for her mother. I've never seen any evidence of the behavioral problems described in this psychological evaluation." But my most important call was to Jennifer Hayes, Sarah's younger sister who lived in Connecticut. Jennifer had maintained a close relationship with Emma despite Madison's attempts to limit contact with Sarah's family. "I knew something was wrong," Jennifer said. "Emma seemed withdrawn and nervous during our last visit 2 months ago. She kept apologizing for everything, even when she hadn't done anything wrong. Madison hovered over her constantly and corrected everything she said." Jennifer revealed something crucial. She had been present during a conversation where Madison discussed Emma's inheritance with Derek. Sarah's life insurance policy had established a trust fund for Emma's education, worth nearly $200,000. Madison had been pressuring Derek to access those funds for Tyler and Sophia's private school tuition. Madison said it wasn't fair that Emma got all that money when Tyler and Sophia had needs too. Jennifer recalled. "She kept saying the money should be used for all the children, not just Emma. This gave me a new avenue to investigate. I contacted Robert Chen, the financial advisor who managed Emma's trust fund. What he told me made my blood boil. I've been concerned about some irregularities," Robert admitted. "Madison has been calling frequently, asking about procedures for accessing the trust funds for family emergencies. Last month, she submitted paperwork claiming to be Emma's legal guardian and requesting a withdrawal of $50,000 for Emma's psychological treatment." "Did you approve the withdrawal?" I asked, my heart pounding. "I requested additional documentation, which she hasn't provided yet," Robert said. "But Mrs. Patterson, the paperwork she submitted appeared to show Derek's signature authorizing her as Emma's legal guardian for financial matters." Madison hadn't just planned to abandon Emma. She had planned to steal her inheritance first. This was grand theft, fraud, and child abandonment all rolled into one calculated scheme. I spent the afternoon gathering more evidence. Emma's former babysitter, Carol Thompson, confirmed that Emma had always been easy to care for and had never displayed aggressive or defiant behavior. The manager at Emma's gymnastics program described her as cooperative and enthusiastic. Her Sunday school teacher at our church said Emma was one of the most polite and helpful children in her class. Every person who had regular contact with Emma told the same story. She was a normal, healthy child who had adjusted remarkably well to her mother's death. The only person who claimed Emma had behavioral problems was Madison, and now Dr. Pike, who had never actually met Emma in person. That evening, Patricia called with more disturbing news. "I've done some research on Dr. Harrison Pike," she said. "Has been involved in several cases where his diagnoses have been questioned. 3 families have filed complaints against him for recommending unnecessary residential treatment for children. There's also an investigation into his financial relationships with the treatment facilities he recommends. You're saying he might be getting paid to diagnose children as needing expensive treatment? I asked. It's possible. And Betsy, there's something else. Madison's ex-husband from her first marriage has contacted me. He wants to testify on your behalf. The next morning, I met with James Peterson, Madison's first husband and the father of Tyler and Sophia. James was a quiet man in his 30s who worked as an accountant. His story was heartbreakingly familiar. Madison gradually isolated me from Tyler and Sophia, James explained. She convinced them that I was the reason for all their problems. She made me feel like I was failing as a father, that my children would be better off without me. When we divorced, I agreed to minimal custody because I thought it was what was best for them. James had been paying substantial child support and had maintained a relationship with his children, but Madison controlled every interaction. Recently, Tyler had started asking questions about why he couldn't spend more time with his father. I think Madison is doing to Derek exactly what she did to me, James said. She finds good men who love their children, then convinces them that they're inadequate parents. She isolates them from their support systems and makes them dependent on her for validation. James agreed to testify about Madison's pattern of parental alienation. More importantly, he had documentation showing that Madison had attempted to access Tyler and Sophia's college funds for personal expenses, just as she was now doing with Emma's trust. As I drove home from that meeting, I realized I was building a comprehensive case that exposed Madison's true nature. She wasn't just a woman who didn't want to deal with a stepchild. She was a predator who targeted families, manipulated loving fathers, and exploited children for financial gain. But I also knew that Madison was smart and manipulative. She had convinced Derek to abandon his daughter, isolated him from everyone who might question her narrative, and come dangerously close to having Emma permanently removed from their family. The custody hearing was Monday morning, and everything depended on whether the judge would see through Madison's carefully constructed lies. That night, I sat with Emma as she colored pictures at my kitchen table. She had drawn a family portrait that showed herself, Derek, Tyler, Sophia, and me. But Madison was notably absent. I miss Daddy, Emma said quietly. Do you think he misses me too? I gathered her into my arms, this precious child who had lost her mother, been abandoned by her father, and yet still had room in her heart for forgiveness and love. I think your daddy is very confused right now, sweetheart. But I believe that deep down, he misses you very much. I hoped I was right. Because if Derek had truly been lost to Madison's manipulation, Emma might never get the chance to have a father again. And that possibility was more than my heart could bear. Monday morning arrived with an early phone call that changed everything. Derek and Madison had returned from their vacation a day early and were demanding immediate custody of Emma. Patricia informed me that they were meeting us at the courthouse with their attorney for an emergency session before our scheduled hearing. I arranged for Emma to stay with my neighbor, Mrs. Franklin, while Patricia and I faced whatever Madison had planned. As we walked into the family courthouse, I steeled myself for battle. In my briefcase, I carried evidence of financial fraud, parental alienation, and child abuse, but I also carried the weight of knowing that Derek might be too far gone to save. The confrontation happened in the courthouse lobby. Derek looked terrible, thin and pale with dark circles under his eyes. But when he saw me, confusion flickered across his face rather than anger. "Mom," he said hesitantly, using the name he had called me since marrying Sarah. "I thought you understood that Emma needed professional help." Madison stood beside him, her arm linked possessively through his. She looked polished and confident, every inch the concerned stepmother protecting her family. "Derek," I said carefully, "do you remember what you promised Sarah when she was dying?" For a moment, something shifted in Derek's expression. His brow furrowed as if he was trying to recall a distant memory. "I promised her that Emma would always be loved and protected," he said slowly. But Madison explained that sometimes love means making hard choices. Emma needs help that we can't provide at home. "What kind of help?" I pressed. "Derek, when was the last time you actually saw Emma have a behavioral problem?" Derek opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. He looked to Madison for guidance, and she immediately stepped forward. Emma had a major meltdown just before we left for vacation, Madison said smoothly. She threw toys, screamed at Tyler and Sophia, and told Derek she wished he was dead like her mother. It was heartbreaking to watch. I saw Derek flinch at these words, but something in his reaction told me he wasn't remembering this incident so much as accepting Madison's description of it. Derek, I said firmly, I need you to think carefully. Can you actually remember Emma saying those words to you? Can you picture it happening? Derek's confusion deepened. He pressed his hand to his forehead as if fighting a headache. I remember Madison telling me about it, he said uncertainly. Emma has so many episodes that they blur together. What episodes? I demanded. Derek, I've spoken with Emma's teacher, her doctor, her babysitter, everyone who spends time with her. Not one person has ever witnessed these behavioral problems Madison describes. Madison's composure began to crack. You're trying to manipulate Derek just like you manipulated Sarah, she snapped. Emma needs residential treatment, and Derek agrees. That's what's best for everyone. Patricia chose that moment to present Derek with the evidence we had gathered. She opened the folder containing bank records, Dr. Pike's questionable history, and testimony from James Peterson about Madison's previous pattern of parental alienation. Derek, I think you need to see this, Patricia said, handing him the documents. Madison has been accessing Emma's trust fund without proper authorization. She's stolen nearly $30,000 for Tyler and Sophia's private school tuition. Derek stared at the bank records, his face growing pale. Madison, what is this? You told me you were using your savings for their school. Those records are fake, Madison said quickly. But her voice had lost its confident tone. Betsy is desperate and will say anything to keep Emma. Derek, I said gently, when was the last time you had coffee without Madison making it for you? The question seemed to come from nowhere, and Derek looked puzzled. I don't understand what you mean. Emma told me that Madison puts special powder in your coffee every morning. She said it makes you sleepy and forgetful. Derek's hand went to his head again. I've been having headaches and memory problems, he admitted. Madison said it was stress from dealing with Emma's behavior. Madison's mask was slipping completely now. That's ridiculous, she said, but her voice was shrill. Derek, don't let them confuse you. Remember what Dr. Pike said about Emma. Remember that Tyler and Sophia are your real family now. Tyler and Sophia love Emma, Derek said suddenly, as if the words surprised him. Tyler keeps asking when Emma is coming home. He wants to show her his new baseball cards. Children don't understand what's best for them. Madison shot back. Tyler and Sophia will adjust. They'll be happier without Emma's constant drama. Something in Madison's tone must have penetrated Derek's fog because his expression suddenly sharpened. What drama? Emma plays quietly with them. She reads them bedtime stories. She helped Sophia learn to ride her bike. Patricia pulled out her phone and played a recording of Emma's interview with the social worker. As Emma's small voice filled the courthouse lobby, describing how Madison had told her she wasn't really part of the family, Derek's face underwent a complete transformation. She said what to my daughter? Derek's voice was dangerous now, the protective father finally emerging from Madison's manipulation. Emma misunderstood. Madison said desperately, she's always been dramatic and manipulative, just like her mother. The words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Derek stared at Madison as if seeing her clearly for the first time. Don't you dare speak about Sarah that way, he said, his voice low and furious. Sarah was gentle and loving, and Emma is exactly like her. Madison realized she had made a fatal error. Derek, you're not thinking clearly. Remember, you agreed that Emma needed help. You signed the papers. What papers? Derek demanded. I thought I was signing permission slips for school activities. Patricia handed him copies of the legal documents he had signed. As Derek read through them, understanding and horror dawned on his face. You tricked me, he whispered. You made me sign away my rights to my own daughter. I saved you from making a mistake. Madison said, her true nature fully revealed now. Emma is Sarah's daughter, not yours. She's a constant reminder of your dead wife. Tyler and Sophia are your future. Emma is just baggage from your past. Derek's reaction was immediate and volcanic. Emma is my daughter, he roared. I adopted her when she was 2 years old. I walked her to her first day of kindergarten. I taught her to ride a bike and helped her learn to read. She calls me Daddy because that's what I am. The courthouse lobby had gone silent. Other families and lawyers stopped their conversations to watch the drama unfolding. You poisoned me, Derek continued, his voice breaking. You drugged my coffee and twisted my thoughts and made me abandon my little girl. What kind of monster are you? Madison's response revealed everything about her character. The kind that knows when a man is too weak to make hard decisions. She snarled. Emma was never going to be my problem. I have my own children to worry about. Derek turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Mom, where is Emma? Is she okay? Please tell me I haven't lost her forever. She's safe, I said, my own voice thick with emotion. She's staying with me, and she's been asking for you every day. I need to see her, Derek said urgently. I need to tell her I'm sorry. I need to explain that I was sick and confused, but that I love her more than anything. Madison made one last desperate attempt to regain control. Derek, you're making a huge mistake. If you choose Emma over Tyler and Sophia, it'll take them away from you. You'll lose all your children. Derek looked at Madison with complete disgust. You're right about one thing. I am going to lose children today, but they won't be mine. Tyler and Sophia deserve better than a mother who uses them as weapons, and Emma deserves better than a stepmother who tried to destroy her. As we walked into the courtroom for the custody hearing, Derek placed his hand on my shoulder. Mom, I don't remember everything that happened, but I know I failed Emma and I failed Sarah's memory. I don't know if Emma will ever forgive me, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to make this right. The hearing lasted less than an hour. With Derek's testimony about Madison's deception and the mountain of evidence Patricia had gathered, the judge granted me temporary custody, while Derek received court-ordered psychological evaluation to assess his competency as a parent. But the real victory came that afternoon when I brought Emma to Derek's hotel room. She ran to him without hesitation, throwing her arms around his neck as he sobbed apologies into her hair. I missed you so much, Daddy, Emma whispered. I knew you'd come back for me. I'm never leaving you again, Derek promised. Never, never, never. As I watched them hold each other, I knew that Madison's web of lies had finally been shattered, but the real work of healing was just beginning. The weeks following Derek's awakening moved quickly, driven by his determination to right the wrongs Madison had orchestrated. The first step was getting Derek proper medical care to address the effects of months of being drugged without his knowledge. Dr. Patricia Williams, Derek's physician, confirmed that Derek had been systematically poisoned with a combination of anti-anxiety medication and sleep aids that had impaired his cognitive function and made him susceptible to manipulation. The blood tests revealed levels of benzodiazepines that should have been prescribed and monitored by a doctor. Someone was essentially chemically restraining your son, Dr. Williams explained to me privately. The dosages were carefully calculated to keep him functional enough for work, but impaired enough to be easily controlled. This level of premeditation suggests extensive planning. Meanwhile, Patricia Walsh worked with the district attorney's office to build criminal charges against Madison. The financial fraud was clear-cut, with bank records showing unauthorized access to Emma's trust fund. But the charges expanded when Tyler confided to Derek about Madison's treatment of all 3 children. She told me and Sophia that you didn't really love us because we weren't your real children, Tyler revealed during one of Derek's supervised visits. She said if we told you we loved Emma or wanted to see our real dad, you would send us away too. The 9-year-old boy's testimony revealed that Madison had been psychologically abusing Tyler and Sophia as well, using their fear of abandonment to control their behavior and their relationship with Derek. Derek made the difficult decision to fight for custody of Tyler and Sophia. They're my children too, he explained to me. I may not be their biological father, but I've raised them for 2 years. I can't let Madison continue to hurt them. James Peterson, Madison's ex-husband, proved to be a crucial ally. He had been documenting Madison's alienating behavior and had evidence of her attempts to access his children's college funds for personal expenses. Together, Derek and James presented a united front that exposed Madison's pattern of exploiting the men in her life while harming their children. The custody battle was emotionally draining, but ultimately successful. Tyler and Sophia expressed their desire to live with Derek, telling the family court judge that they felt safer and happier in his care than they ever had with Madison. Derek reads us bedtime stories like Emma's daddy used to do, Sophia told the judge during her private interview. And he doesn't get angry when we talk about missing our real daddy. Dr. Pike's involvement in the case led to a broader investigation of his practice. When authorities discovered that he had been recommending expensive residential treatments for children without proper evaluations, and that he received financial kickbacks from the facilities, his license was suspended pending a full investigation. The criminal charges against Madison included grand theft, child endangerment, fraud, and assault for drugging Derek without his consent. She pleaded guilty to the financial crimes in exchange for a reduced sentence, but the damage to her reputation and her ability to manipulate future relationships was permanent. 6 months after that terrible day at the airport, I hosted Derek, Emma, Tyler, and Sophia for Sunday dinner in my dining room. The house was filled with the sounds of children laughing, Derek telling stories about his day at work, and the kind of family conversation I had thought we might never have again. Emma had flourished under Derek's renewed attention and love. The withdrawn, fearful child Madison had tried to create was replaced by the confident, joyful little girl Sarah had raised. She started first grade at a new school where Derek volunteered as a reading helper, making sure she never felt abandoned or alone. Tyler and Sophia were adjusting well to their new life. Derek had enrolled them in family therapy to address the psychological damage Madison had inflicted, and both children were slowly learning to trust that love didn't come with conditions or threats. "I'm sorry I believed the things Mommy Madison said about you," Tyler told Emma one afternoon as they played in my backyard. "You're not bad or mean. You're the best sister ever." Derek had moved into a smaller house just 10 minutes from my home, prioritizing proximity to family support over the impressive suburban mansion Madison had insisted upon. He worked fewer hours and spent evenings helping with homework, playing board games, and rebuilding the relationships Madison had tried to destroy. "I lost myself," Derek admitted to me one evening, after the children were in bed. "Madison made me believe that being a good father meant making hard choices that hurt my children. She convinced me that love meant sacrifice, when really love means protection and presence." The financial restoration was also significant. Not only was Emma's trust fund fully restored with interest and penalties paid by Madison, but Derek discovered that Madison had been skimming money from their household accounts for months. The court ordered full restitution, and Derek used the recovered funds to establish college savings accounts for Tyler and Sophia. James Peterson gradually increased his involvement in his children's lives. Without Madison's interference, Tyler and Sophia were able to rebuild their relationship with their father, and Derek supported this process fully. "Children deserve to have all the people who love them in their lives," Derek explained to me. "I won't make the mistakes Madison made. I won't use love as a weapon or try to erase people who matter to these kids." The most profound change was in Derek himself. The fog of manipulation and chemical interference had lifted, revealing the loving father Sarah had believed he could be. He spoke about Sarah regularly with Emma, sharing memories and keeping her mother's presence alive in their daily lives. "Mommy would be proud of how brave you were," Derek told Emma one night as he tucked her into bed. "You stayed strong and kept your heart open even when things were scary." That's exactly what she would have wanted. Emma smiled and hugged her father tightly. "Mommy told me in a dream that you would come back for me. She said sometimes daddies get lost, but love always helps them find their way home." As I watched this family heal and grow stronger, I realized that Madison's attempt to destroy them had ultimately revealed how unbreakable their bonds really were. Love had indeed found a way home, but it had taken the fierce protection of a grandmother and the awakening of a father to make that journey possible. 1 year later, I stood in my backyard watching Emma blow out 6 candles on her birthday cake, surrounded by Derek, Tyler, Sophia, James, and a gathering of friends who had become our chosen family. The scene was everything Sarah would have wanted for her daughter: love, laughter, security, and the promise of a bright future. Emma had grown taller and more confident over the past year. Her kindergarten teacher, Mrs. Johnson, regularly sent home notes about Emma's kindness to classmates and her enthusiasm for learning. The behavioral problems Madison had fabricated never materialized because they had never existed in the first place. Tyler and Sophia now called me Grandma Betsy and included Emma in all their activities as naturally as if they had been siblings from birth. The three children had formed a protective bond, having survived Madison's manipulation together and emerged stronger for it. Derek had transformed back into the man Sarah fell in love with, but with added wisdom and vigilance. He attended parenting classes, went to therapy to process the trauma of being systematically deceived, and built new relationships with other single parents who understood the challenges of blended families. I learned that being a good parent isn't about making children conform to what other people want. Derek reflected during our weekly family dinners. It's about protecting them from people who would use them for their own purposes, and creating an environment where they can be exactly who they are. The legal consequences for Madison extended beyond criminal charges. Dr. Pike's medical license was permanently revoked, and his victims, including families who had unnecessarily institutionalized their children based on his false diagnoses, pursued civil lawsuits that would ensure he could never harm another family. Madison herself served 18 months in prison for fraud and child endangerment. When she was released, she relocated to another state, but the network of families she had damaged had connected through social media and support groups, making it difficult for her to establish new relationships without her history becoming known. James Peterson had remarried a wonderful woman named Lisa, who embraced Tyler and Sophia as her own stepchildren while respecting their relationships with Derek and their complex family history. The children now had 4 parents who communicated openly and put their well-being first. "We created something better than a traditional family," Derek told me recently. "We created a family based on choice and commitment rather than just biology or legal papers." Emma's trust fund had grown substantially, managed now by a team of advisors who included both Derek and James. But more importantly, Emma had grown into a child who understood her own worth and wouldn't accept treatment that diminished her value. When a new student at school tried to exclude Emma from a group project, Emma calmly told her teacher, "My family taught me that people who try to make others feel small are showing their own problems, not mine. I'll find friends who appreciate what I bring to the group." I marveled at the wisdom in this 6-year-old child who had survived abandonment and emerged with her sense of self intact. The most profound lesson of this entire experience was about the power of unconditional love and the importance of fighting for truth when lies threaten to destroy innocent lives. Madison's manipulation had been sophisticated and nearly successful because she understood how to exploit good people's desire to do what was right. She convinced me that sacrificing Emma was noble, Derek explained to other fathers in his support group. She made me believe that real love sometimes requires letting go, when actually real love requires holding on and fighting for the people who matter most. I had learned my own lessons about trusting my instincts and refusing to accept explanations that didn't align with what I knew to be true about the people I loved. When everyone else accepted Madison's version of Emma as a troubled child, I held on to my knowledge of who Emma really was. The ripple effects of our victory extended beyond our family. Other grandparents reached out to me through social media, sharing their own stories of parental alienation and asking for advice about protecting their grandchildren from manipulative family members. Patricia Walsh had started a support network for families facing similar situations, and I volunteered to mentor other grandparents navigating custody battles and family court systems. Our story had become a beacon of hope for others fighting similar battles. "Sometimes the system works," Patricia often told her clients, "but only when families are willing to fight for truth and refuse to accept injustice." As I tucked Emma into bed on her birthday night, she looked up at me with eyes full of joy and security. "Grandma Betsy, I'm glad Madison tried to get rid of me," she said, surprising me with her words. "Why would you say that, sweetheart?" I asked. "Because it showed me how many people really love me," Emma explained. Sometimes you don't know how strong love is until someone tries to break it. Our love was stronger than her mean tricks. From the mouths of babes came the deepest truth of our journey. Love, real love, cannot be destroyed by manipulation or lies or even temporary separation. It endures, it fights back, and ultimately, it wins. Derek had kept his promise to Sarah, though it took him longer than either of them would have hoped. Emma was loved, protected, and surrounded by people who would never let her face the world alone. Tyler and Sophia had learned that family isn't about perfection or control, but about acceptance and commitment. And I had learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to give up on people, even when they seem to have given up on themselves. As I turned off Emma's bedroom light and listened to the sounds of Derek helping Tyler and Sophia with their bedtime routines, I felt Sarah's presence strongly. She would be proud of the family we had fought to preserve and protect. The greatest victory wasn't defeating Madison or exposing her crimes. The greatest victory was proving that love really is stronger than hate, that truth eventually defeats lies, and that families willing to fight for each other can overcome even the most sophisticated attempts to tear them apart. Our story reminds us that we must protect the vulnerable, question narratives that seem designed to hurt innocent people, and never underestimate the power of one person who refuses to accept injustice. Sometimes the most important battles are fought not in boardrooms or courtrooms, but in airport lobbies and family kitchens and children's bedrooms, by ordinary people who choose to do extraordinary things for love. Have you ever had to fight for someone you love when others couldn't see their true worth? The bonds we forge through adversity often become the strongest foundations for lasting happiness. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family challenges and how love helped you find your way through difficult times. Thank you for sharing this journey with me. Your willingness to listen and connect reminds me that we're all part of a larger family of people who believe in protecting those who need our strength. Please like this story if it touched your heart. Subscribe for more stories about triumph over adversity. Share it with others who might need hope, and comment below with your thoughts about the power of fighting for family. May your own family bonds be strengthened by the challenges you face together. And may you always have the courage to fight for love when it matters most.